I've worked the night shift at St. Augustine Memorial Hospital for almost 6 years. It's a small facility tucked away in the hills of rural Pennsylvania, quiet, underfunded, and mostly forgotten. We don't get much traffic after midnight, which is why I liked it. Peaceful, predictable. I was covering for a nurse who called out sick. It was a Tuesday night, cold and rainy, the kind of night where the fog rolls in thick and the silence feels heavier than usual. I arrived at 11:45 p.m., grabbed a coffee from the vending machine, and settled into the nurse's station. The hospital was unusually quiet. No patients in the ER, no calls from upstairs, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional beep from the monitors. At 12:03 a.m., the phone rang. "Room 6, the voice said. It was raspy, almost mechanical. I blinked. "Excuse me." "Room 6, she's awake." Then the line went dead. Room 6 had been empty for weeks. It was the isolation room, used for patients with severe infections or psychiatric holds. I checked the log. No one had been admitted. I grabbed my flashlight and headed down the west wing. The hallway was dimly lit, the motion sensors slow to respond. As I approached room 6, I felt a chill. Not from the air, from something else, something wrong. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was dark. The bed was made. The monitors were off. But someone was sitting in the corner. She was facing the wall, knees pulled to her chest, wearing a hospital gown. Her hair was long and matted, her skin pale and bruised. "Ma'am," I said, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" She didn't move. I reached for the light switch. The bulb flickered, then died. I turned back to her. She was standing now. Her face was inches from mine. Her eyes were black. She whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I stumbled back, heart racing. The flashlight flickered. When it came back on, she was gone. The room was empty. I ran back to the nurse's station and pulled up the patient records. Room 6 had been used last in 1997. The patient was a woman named Eleanor Marsh, admitted for psychiatric evaluation after she was found wandering the woods, covered in blood. She died in that room. The cause of death was listed as unknown. I printed the file and took it to Dr. Patel, the overnight physician. He looked at me like I was crazy. "There's no one in room 6, he said. "It's been sealed for years." I saw her. I insisted. She spoke to me. He sighed. "You've been working too many nights. Go home, get some sleep." But I couldn't, not after what I saw. I decided to set up a voice recorder in room 6, just to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I placed it under the bed and left it running overnight. The next morning, I retrieved it and played it back in my car. The first hour was silence. Then, at 2:17 a.m., I heard breathing, heavy, labored. Then a voice. "She's coming." Loud, violent, like someone being torn apart. I dropped the recorder. My hands were shaking. I didn't go back to work that night, that week. I started having nightmares. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, with the sound of screaming still echoing in my ears. In the dreams, I was in room 6. The walls were bleeding, the lights were flickering, and Eleanor was there, crawling toward me, her mouth open wide, her eyes hollow. She whispered, "You opened the door." I tried to shake it off, told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation. But then things started happening at home. My lights would flicker at exactly 2:17 a.m. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway. My dog refused to enter my bedroom. One night, I woke up to find Eleanor standing at the foot of my bed. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. I screamed. She vanished. I called out of work for a week, but the hospital kept calling me back. They were short-staffed. They needed me. I agreed to one last shift. It was a Friday night, stormy. The power had gone out twice already. I arrived at 11:30 p.m. The nurse's station was empty. Dr. Patel was nowhere to be found. At 12:03 a.m., the phone rang. "Room 6, the voice said. I hung up. I wasn't going back there. But the lights in the hallway began to flicker. One by one they went out, leading me toward room 6. I tried to resist, tried to run, but my feet moved on their own. The door opened before I touched it. Inside, Eleanor was waiting. She spoke without moving her lips. You let me in. I shook my head. I didn't mean to. You recorded me. You remembered me. That's all it takes. The walls began to bleed. The bed levitated. The air turned ice cold. I screamed. She smiled. And then everything went black. I woke up in the hospital bed. Room 6. The monitors were beeping. The lights were on. Dr. Patel stood over me. You had a seizure, he said. You collapsed in the hallway. I never went back to that hospital again. It still haunts me. I was admitted to St. Augustine General on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Pneumonia. Not the worst case, but bad enough that I needed oxygen and IV antibiotics. I was exhausted, coughing constantly, and my chest felt like it was filled with wet cement. They wheeled me into room 304, private room, clean, quiet, the kind of place where you're supposed to rest and recover. The nurse, her name was Clara, hooked me up to the IV and adjusted the oxygen flow. She was kind but distant, the kind of nurse who's seen too much and doesn't get attached. You'll be fine, she said. Just rest. We'll check on you every few hours. I nodded, already drifting. The meds were strong. The room dimmed. The rain tapped gently on the window. I fell asleep to the sound of my own breathing. I woke up around 3 a.m. The room was dark, except for the faint green glow of the heart monitor. My chest ached. I reached for the call button but stopped. There was a sound, a soft, wheezing breath, not mine, slower, labored, like someone struggling to inhale through a mask. I turned my head toward the door. There was someone standing just outside, a woman, pale hospital gown, thin frame. Her face was obscured by a fogged-up oxygen mask. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and fixed on me. I blinked. She was gone. I sat up, heart pounding. Maybe it was a hallucination, the meds, the fever. I told myself that, and tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been watched. The next morning, they moved another patient into the room, an older man named Harold, recovering from a hip replacement. He was quiet, polite. We made small talk. I didn't mention the woman. But that night, as the lights dimmed and the hallway quieted, he turned to me and said, "You saw her, didn't you?" I froze. "What?" "The woman in the oxygen mask," he said. "She comes at night, always around 3. I laughed nervously. "You're joking." He didn't laugh. "She watches, doesn't speak, just stares, and when she points at you." He trailed off. "What happens when she points?" I asked. He looked away. "You don't wake up." I didn't sleep that night. I watched the door, every shadow, every flicker of light. At 3:11 a.m., I heard it again, the wheezing. She was back. This time, she was inside the room, standing at the foot of Harold's bed. Her gown was soaked, her oxygen mask fogged, her eyes locked on him. She raised one trembling hand and pointed. I wanted to scream, to move, but I was frozen. She vanished. Harold didn't wake up. The nurses came in at 6 a.m., found Harold cold, no pulse, no signs of distress, just gone. They called a code, but it was too late. I told Clara what I saw. She went pale. "You need to rest," she said. "You're not well." "I'm not crazy," I snapped. She was here. She didn't argue, just increased my sedative dose. That night, I pretended to take the meds, hid the pill under my tongue. I needed to know the truth. The next day, I asked a different nurse, an intern named Jamie, about the room. He hesitated, then said, "Room 304 used to be part of the old ICU, before the renovations." So, there was a patient, years ago, oxygen failure, during a power outage. No one noticed until morning. What happened to her? He looked around, lowered his voice. She died, alone, suffocated. They say she still wanders the halls, looking for help. I asked her name. He didn't know, but I did. That evening, I wheeled myself to the nurse's station, while they were busy with shift change. I found the old records. Her name was Margaret Elkins, age 62, admitted for respiratory failure, died in room 304 during a blackout in 1998. The report said she was found with her oxygen mask still on, eyes wide open, fingernails torn from scratching at the bed rails. Time of death, 3:11 a.m. I didn't sleep. I sat upright, staring at the door. The rain returned, the lights flickered. At exactly 3:11 a.m., the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. She appeared, not outside the room, not at the foot of the bed, right beside me. Her face was inches from mine. The mask hissed with every breath. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and rage. She raised her hand and pointed. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The machines around me began to beep wildly. I felt my chest tighten, my vision blurred. Then she stopped, lowered her hand. She turned and vanished. I woke up in the ICU. They said I had a respiratory episode, almost coded, but I pulled through. They moved me to a different room. I asked Clara if she believed me. She didn't answer, but she looked scared. Before I was discharged, I left a note at the nurse's station. Her name was Margaret Elkins. She died in room 304. Don't forget her. It's been 6 months. I still dream of her, still hear the wheezing. Sometimes I wake up at 3:11 a.m. and I swear I feel like something is watching me. I've worked in hospitals for most of my adult life, and I've seen things that would make most people lose sleep for weeks. I've seen patients come back from the brink of death, others slip away with no warning, no explanation. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever shaken me like what happened during my first month at St. Alora's Neurological Institute. It was late October, and I had just transferred in from a city hospital. St. Alora's was supposed to be quieter, more focused, a place where I could concentrate on my research and get away from the chaos of emergency medicine. The hospital was buried deep within a forest so dense and remote that once you passed the last gas stations, it felt like the world behind you simply vanished, and all that remained was the winding road, the trees pressing in, and the looming shadow of the building waiting in silence. And the architecture was old. Stone walls, narrow corridors, high ceilings that echoed even the softest footsteps. It had a kind of Gothic charm, but something about it felt off, like the walls had absorbed too much suffering over the years, and were now holding it in, waiting. My first few weeks were uneventful. I was assigned to the East Wing, mostly stroke recovery and dementia cases. The staff were polite, but distant. They did their jobs, but they didn't linger. And the patients, well, they were quiet, too quiet. I chalked it up to the nature of the cases, but even then, the silence felt unnatural, like the building itself was suppressing sound. Then, one Friday night, I was asked to cover the West Wing. I didn't even know we had a West Wing. It wasn't on the standard floor plan, and when I asked about it, the charge nurse just said, "It's mostly long-term cases. You won't need to do much." She handed me a clipboard and walked away without another word. I found the hallway after some searching. It was narrow, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of copper and something else, something sweet and rotten, like old fruit left in a drawer. The door to the wing was locked with a rusted padlock, but the key was taped to the back of the clipboard. I hesitated for a moment, then unlocked it and stepped inside. The silence hit me like a wall. No machines, no voices, no movement, just rows of rooms, with frosted glass windows and faded numbers on the doors. I checked the list. Room 31 was my first stop. The patient was listed as Subject K. No name, no history, just a note that he'd been admitted 12 years ago and hadn't woken up since. I entered the room, and the air felt heavier somehow. The man was lying in bed, eyes closed, vitals stable. I checked the monitors. Everything was normal. But when I leaned in to adjust his IV, I saw it. His eyes were slightly open. Not wide, just enough to see the whites, and enough to feel like he was watching me. I blinked, and they were closed again. I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a muscle twitch. But then I heard it, a whisper, soft, raspy and unmistakable. "Naomi." I spun around, heart racing. The hallway was empty. I checked the intercom, dead. My phone had no signal. I tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the hospital had sealed me in. I turned back to the bed, and the patient was sitting up. I swear to you, he was sitting up. His head tilted toward me, and his mouth moved. No sound came out, just the shape of words. "Let me out." I stepped back, nearly tripping over the stool behind me. "You're not supposed to be awake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled. It was a slow, unnatural smile, like his face wasn't used to the motion. "Neither are they," he said. I turned toward the hallway, and every room, every patient was standing, silent, staring, eyes wide, mouths closed. Then the lights went out. I grabbed my flashlight from my coat pocket, but the beam flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Shadows danced across the walls, and the patients were gone. The hallway was empty again, but I could feel them. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. I ran to the exit, banging on the door, screaming for help. Nothing, no response, just silence. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the corridor. Subject K appeared at the far end of the hallway. His face was wrong, stretched, hollow, like something wearing human skin, but not quite fitting. He raised a hand, and his voice echoed inside my head. "You're mine now." I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up in the ER, surrounded by staff. They said I'd had a seizure, that I'd collapsed in the East Wing, that the West Wing had been sealed for years, that no patients had been admitted there in over a decade. But I remember the patients. I remember the whispers. Till now, when I think of that incident, it still creeps my mind, still haunts me.